Assalamualaikum. My name is Addeena Binti Shamsul Ambia. So today, me and my friends are going to present about our country, which is Indonesia. Indonesia, or also can be called as Republic of Indonesia, is a country in the Southeast Asia located between Indian and Pacific Oceans. Indonesia consists of over 7,000 islands, which are Sumatra, Java, Sulawesi, and also parts of Borneo and New Guinea. It has a strategic location, attract major sea lanes, and is an archipelago of 17,508 islands, which border Timor-Leste, Malaysia, and Papua New Guinea. Despite being the largest country with densely populated regions, Indonesia has vast area of wilderness that support one of the world's highest level of biodiversity. In 2020, Indonesia's population was 270.2 million, the fourth largest in the world, with a moderately high population growth rate of 1.25%. Java is the world's most populous island, where 56% of the country's population lives. Indonesia is the largest country with over 275 million people, making it the most populous Muslim majority country. The country consists of thousands of distinct native, ethnic, and linguistic groups, with the Javanese being the largest group. So next is about Indonesia economy. Indonesia has a mixed economy. The private sector and the government both play a vital role. Indonesia has the largest economy in the region and is classified as a newly industrialized country. Indonesia is the world's 70th largest economy by nominal GDP, 7 in terms of GDP of PPP. GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product. Services are the Services are the economy's largest sectors and account for 43.4% of GDP, followed by industry at 39.7% and agriculture at 12.8%. The country has employed more people than other sectors, accounting for 47.7% of total labor force, agriculture sector of 30.2%, and industry about 21.9%. Besides that, Indonesia is also famous for its beach, especially in Bali, and they also have diving sites in Bunaka, Mount Bromo in East Java, Lake Toba, and various national parks in Sumatra. These natural attractions are complemented by a rich cultural heritage that reflects Indonesia's dynamic history and ethnic diversity. The capital of the country is Jakarta, which is also the world's second most populous urban area. The country shares land borders with Papua New Guinea, East Timor, and the eastern part of Malaysia.
Causes of inflation. First, Indonesia's inflation rate has jumped to a 7-year high because of low commodity supply amid high demand. This happens when demand is higher than supply. Second, supply chains of various commodities have been disrupted due to the global situation. Production became limited because of seasonal losses such as shallots and chilies. Third, the Ukraine war was also one of the reasons why the inflation rate in Indonesia increased. Ukraine's effect on Indonesia is due to import price. Import push inflation. Impact of inflation. First, inflation can affect the poor. Consumers with lower salaries typically spend a higher percentage of their total income on needs and those with higher incomes. Second, interest rates would increase. When inflation occurs, the Fed normally boosts interest rates to prevent individuals and businesses from taking too much debt and spending excessive amounts of money.
Next, causes of unemployment. First, imbalance between employment and labor force. This is because Indonesian population growth has not been supported by the creation of jobs, which has led to an increase in the number of young graduates looking for work. As a result, the unemployment rate up along with the population. Second, technological innovation. Technology advancement is something to be proud of because it makes human labor easier. But as technology advances, many businesses now only need a small number of employees to fill the vacancy left by robots and other cutting-edge machinery. It is because a business using robot rather than human is the lower cost of quick and accurate labor. Third is skill and education. Uh, it is quite challenging to integrate someone with a less education into the workforce. Those without a college degree typically only find employment as manual labor. A person may experience lifelong employment if abuse employment does not exist and does not have the attitude of an entrepreneur. Next, impact of unemployment. So the effect is economic effect. So, economic activity may decline as a result of employment. If high unemployment, it means that the government will receive less taxation revenue but will have to pay more on unemployment benefits. Therefore, less money to spend on other areas such as education and the health. The unemployed sector will have some difficulty in Indonesia as well because they have lower and more uncertain wages as well as less access to essential protection and service. While the movement of money in the informal economy is not a tax and cannot be taken into account when calculating the country GNP or GDP, therefore it is better for both the economy and the workers.
Assalamualaikum. One of the methods to combat inflation is to use monetary policy. The monetary policy used by the Indonesian government is in collaboration with Bank Indonesia. There are two methods: Inflation Targeting Framework (ITF) or BI7DRRR. The inflation targeting framework is relevant for the mandate and institutional arrangement in the prevailing laws, and Bank Indonesia continues to change its policy to create a flexible ITF. A flexible ITF is a forward-looking monetary policy which will help Indonesia achieve its inflationary target by strengthening its mandates to maintain price stability and support financial stability. Uh, the Bank Indonesian 7-day reverse repo rate or BI7DRRR is a monetary policy cost transmission mechanism that is used to adjust to influence inflation. They influence inflation through various mechanisms and interactions between central bank, the banking industry, and the financial sector. An increase in BI7DRR will increase the differential between Indonesia's rate and other countries, which will help by lowering interest rates, which could help stimulate economic activities because workers will demand higher wages and as such increase their purchasing power. The multi-policy transmission mechanism is characterized by a time lag. The effectiveness of the monetary policy transmission mechanism is affected by external conditions, the financial sector, and the banking industry. Bank Indonesia use interest rate channels to control inflation by influencing deposit rates and lending rates, in which it impacts aggregate demand and reduces inflationary pressure. There are three methods of fiscal policy to control inflation that is used by the Indonesian government. Firstly is investment in public sector. They are investing in public sectors such as infrastructure, healthcare, and education. The Indonesia has also enacted major expenditure cuts in public investment and other development plans in order to offset lower levels of revenue and rising interest expenditure. Secondly is debt monetization. The Indonesian government has taken into debt monetization to control rising borrowing costs, cash handouts to the poor, and providing several tax breaks. Finally is a budget bill. Indonesia has implemented a budget bill as an emergency measure which could widen the budget deficit beyond a limit of 3% of the GDP. This is so that there is more room for government spending and provision of an academic emergency and avoiding a significant inflation in the medical sector.
By adjusting the amount of government expenditure and revenue, fiscal policy is one of the macroeconomic measures that can affect resource allocation, income redistribution, and business cycle volatility. Indonesian government should implement expansionary fiscal policy like increase government and decrease taxes. Increase government expenditures by initiating more development projects, resulting in a multiplier effect on aggregate demand. Production will rise, decreasing cyclical unemployment in the end. For decreased taxes, The Indonesian government will need to follow an expansive economic strategy, which entails lowering taxes while raising spending. Lower taxes increase disposable income, which in turn encourages consumers to spend more, increasing aggregate demand, which raises real GDP. Authorities and government have consistently used monetary policies because they are one of the most successful weapons for stabilizing consumption prices, increasing economic output, and more significantly, creating jobs for the general population. So there are three monetary policy, which are open market operations, lowering the required reserve ratio, and lowering the interest rate. To increase the supply of money, the Central Bank of Indonesia needs to buy government securities, short-term bonds, or treasury bills from the general public on the open market. Consumption and investment will rise as a result, raising aggregate demand and production while decreasing cyclical unemployment. Second, the required reserve ratio for all commercial banks will be reduced by the Central Bank of Indonesia in response to unemployment. As a result, all commercial banks will have higher reserve ratios, and commercial banks will have an increased capacity to offer loans, which will raise the amount of money available to support economic growth and lower unemployment. Third, the Indonesian Central Bank must reduce the bank rate, since doing so makes loans less costly to borrow and encourages businesses to raise investment by hiring more people. To encourage individuals to spend their money, the Central Bank of Indonesia needs to urge the commercial banks to reduce their interest rates on deposit. This will boost aggregate demand and production and as a result, lower cyclical unemployment. So, in conclusion, inflation in Indonesia ranged from 3 to 5% annually from 2005 to 2014, with an average of about 8.5%. Inflation in Indonesia was 2.18% in January. In April, it climbed to 3.47%. Indonesia experienced the cost push type of inflation, and there has been inflation in Indonesia as a result of a decrease in suppliers and a rise in pricing. The Ukrainian crisis was another factor driving up prices in Indonesia. The poor are impacted by inflation, and it also leads to higher borrowing rates and a decrease in certain customers' purchasing power. From the third quarter of 2001 to the third quarter of 2002, the unemployment rate in Indonesia declined from 6.49% to 5.86%. Indonesia has a structural type of unemployment. The causes of unemployment include an imbalance between employment and the labor force, technological investments, people living in poverty, problems with skills and education, the potential of the global market, and employees' unreasonable demands.